at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these, when we love the least of these. Break our hearts once again. Help us to remember when we were only children hoping for a friend. Won't you look around? These are the lives that the world has forgotten, waiting for doors of our hearts and our homes to open. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these, when we love the least of these. If not us, who will be like Jesus to the least of these? If not us, tell me who will be like Jesus to the least of these. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love. Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these, when we love the least of these. At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report for May 5th, 2018. On the heavenly calendar, this is the 9th year of Chungi, 3rd month, and the 20th day, excuse me, the 20th day by the heavenly calendar. Tim Miller sitting in for the second king of Chungi, Hyung Moon, here in Dallas, Texas, where it's 63 degrees and clear. And we're expecting a high of 83 today in Dallas, intervals of clouds and sun. And a clear night tonight at 60 degrees. Had a lot of rain, a couple of days, and especially in the mornings during the last couple of days. But that pattern seems to have passed, and we're going to have a nice day today. Back at the Cheongung, it's 55 degrees, and looking forward to a day of 75, high, partly sunny and pleasant today, and cloudy with a little bit of rain this evening and tonight. All right, let's go to the headlines on Drudge, and on the upper left-hand corner, Drudge has a series of headlines about a real beatdown that a judge gave to Robert Mueller, the special counsel in the Russia collusion. No, it's not the Russian collusion case, is it? It's the impeach Trump by any means case, and that's basically what the judge told Miller, that he says you're not interested in bringing justice, you're not interested in enforcing law, you're just focused on somehow finding a way to impeach the president. So anyway, and Hannity said this is the biggest beatdown that he's ever seen. The main headline on Drudge is the volcano that is erupting on the Big Island of Hawaii. And yesterday there was a 6.9 magnitude earthquake there. And of course, that volcano, Kilauea, has been erupting for quite some time continuously. But it seems to be in a new phase, and fissures are occurring, and people are being evacuated and so forth, and lava is coming out of the earth. And fortunately, no one has been reported to have been injured or killed, and that's a wonderful thing. Now the big news actually that we want to cover today is the President Trump's speech at the NRA convention yesterday. And I'll be getting to that in just a minute, but let's go through what other headlines are on Drudge first. It says here that National Security Administration and National Security Agency, collected 534 million U.S. calls and texts in a year. 534 million sounds like a lot, but if you think that the population of the United States is 340 million, that's less than that's about 1.5 calls per person. So I think maybe they actually collected more than this, but anyway, that we found out about now, 534 million. I think they probably collected more than that, but well, maybe more will come out later. And the USA to become the world's top oil exporter, exporting more oil than any other country in the world. But you know who the top importer is? It's China. China is now the top importer of oil, and some of that is coming from the United States. California tops the UK economy. California is now the 5th largest economy in the world. LA Antifa group hangs Trump in effigy, calls for revolutionary violence. Great test for Trump. Border wall, Texas, Rio Grande Valley. 57 Hondurans to be sent home. They were here on special status because of the situation in Honduras, because of the security situation was very precarious there. But now that was temporary from the beginning. It was intended to be temporary, but it became more and more permanent. But now it's being ended. On the weekend, a Kentucky Derby favorite is seeking to outrun the ghost. And it begins the Detroit radio station boycotting Kanye music. Yes, I think the King will have a lot to say about Kanye West in the coming weeks. But he is really changing some of the voting demographics of America. The support for President Trump among black men has doubled recently, just in the last week or so. That shows how much influence he has. And so, of course, the establishment is up in arms that this black man is leaving the plantation. They don't want him to do that. They don't want him to do that at all. Yeah, but yeah, things are changing. Restaurant manager shows up at woman's home to complain about negative Yelp review. Well, you can, sympathize with him to some extent. After all, one bad review can really cost thousands of dollars for a restaurant. And let's see. LaGuardia Airport security robot is giving women the creeps. Well, better get used to robots. Suddenly, second hidden camera found in Starbucks bathroom. 110-year-old praises friends and onions for long life. I can see the friends. I'm not sure how the onions work. 122.4 degrees in Pakistan, world record for April. Yes, and every time you have a high temperature like that, the media really plays it up. But then when you have the low temperature, they're not so interested. 6 months of winter in Northeast Pennsylvania. Did you see that headline? I didn't either. Yeah. Oh boy, it's only the high temperatures that get preferential coverage. Let's see, on the middle column here, if I can get my judge report to finish updating here. We have that John Kerry has been conducting some shadow diplomacy, and it's being exposed now. He's undercutting the president and conducting some secret huddles with Iran. Yeah. How's that? The former Secretary of State, a Democratic shadow Secretary of State, you might even say, going to a country like Iran that is a serious security threat to the United States. I won't call it an enemy country, but it's a serious security threat to the United States. And he's talking there behind the president's back. And then Drudge has some headlines on Trump at the NRA, but we have some better stories than Drudge has a link to. David Hogg says the president is scared of him. Yeah, I'm sure that's true. And the April job figures came out yesterday. They always come out on the first Friday of the month. It came out, and guess what? Unemployment is down to 3.9%. That's quite low. In fact, it may be even below what's considered full employment. Full employment is not that everybody has a job. It's not that unemployment is at zero, but it means that if unemployment goes any lower, it will start to push wages up and start to cause inflation. That's the official kind of definition of full employment. But it's kind of it's kind of iffy. But anyway, unemployment is down to 3.9%. And of course, the Democrats are crediting Obama. Black Hispanic rates hit record lows. Yeah, that's on the unemployment. See, Valerie Jarrett says, let's credit Obama. Yeah, right. And Apple stock is at an all-time high. Okay. And Trump approval is now up to 51%. This is the daily Rasmussen poll. And actually, he is above where Obama was at this time in his presidency. Yes, Trump is more popular than Obama was at this time in Obama's presidency. See that headline anywhere? Drama, Pence doctor resigns. Some drama going on there in Washington. And tropical disturbance moving toward Florida. Uh-oh, are we going to start the hurricane season already? Wealthy use of private firefighters ignites debate in wildfire country. ISIS calls on fanatics to launch attacks at World Cup. Kill them all. I think we covered that yesterday. The World Cup is being held in Russia during June and July. And ISIS wants to have some spectacular terror incidents there because they want to drive up the body count. That's their goal, to drive up the body count, and they're going to try to do that, they say, in Russia. I hope people in Russia will stay safe. If I were there, I would stay away from the World Cup games. I know, it's nice, wonderful games, everything like that, but watch it on television, right? Denver Post editor resigns after fiery editorial calling out owner. Yeah, and then West Prudence says no crying in newsrooms. Mounting economic chaos leaves many Venezuelans in the dark. Okay. And then here on the right-hand column, again, if I can get the screen to cooperate, here we go. Argentina raises interest rates to 40%. I'd like to find out what that's about. We can go into that if we have time. But sometimes, no pain, no gain. That applies to the economy as well. Sometimes when things get out of kilter, you have to raise rates quite a bit in order to bring them back. At one time in the United States, even during the 70s, I think, 70s or 80s, I think 80s, early 80s, I guess, the interest rate on the 30-year government bond, treasury bond, went up to 20%. Yeah, it had 20% interest rates in the United States, and that was what was that? Be 30 years or almost 40 years ago. Charlie Rose, Trump invites Kanye and Kaepernick to White House race summit. Charlie Rose sued by 3 CBS staffers, claim made intern unclog feces-filled toilet before groping. That's a pretty bad boss to work for. Grand jury subpoenas issued in Harvey criminal case. Billboard chief squashed sex harassment stories about record exec Powell. And United apologized for a concerning incident involving a flight attendant. Apparently, a flight attendant was either drunk or high on drugs or something, and she started cursing during the flight announcement, with the pre-flight announcement. Like, for example, I think she said something like, if your seatbelts aren't fastened now, and then she proceeded to drop an F-bomb at anyone who does not have their seatbelt fastened. So anyway, United is apologizing and refunding all the tickets for the passengers on that flight. Let's see. Supreme Court balance at stake as Kennedy retirement talk heats up. Every year, though, there's talk of Justice Kennedy retiring from the Supreme Court. There was a similar speculation last year, and he didn't retire, of course. But now, again, summer is coming, and usually Supreme Court justices choose the summertime to retire because that's when the court is in recess and there's the least disruption and so forth. We'll see whether Kennedy retires or not. He's a middle of the road. He's a kind of considered to be a swing voter on the Supreme Court. So if President Trump is able to appoint a new justice who is more conservative than Kennedy, that will tip the balance more towards the conservatives. And that will bring us closer to repealing Roe v. Wade, the decision in 1973 that legalized abortion in America. Mormon support for gay marriage grows. In Arizona, McCain gets a visit from Biden, Graham, after surgery. And again, self-driving vehicle involved in a crash. How 5 robots replaced 7 employees at a Swiss bank. All right, let's see if we can start going through the stories about President Trump at the NRA convention yesterday. Drudge is leaking to the AP story, but I think the Atlanta Journal-Constitution did a much better job in covering that event. And so I want to go to that story instead. If you want to see the AP story, you can go to Drudge yourself and click on his headline. But as soon as we can get this AJC story up here. I'm using the internet here in the hotel, and it's not as fast perhaps as we would like. Okay, here it comes. But it was quite a day yesterday at the NRA convention. The King was able to make a lot of good connections. I'm sure he'll be talking about that, perhaps a posting. Check out his Instagram uh, account. I'm sure he'll be posting photographs there. In particular, he met one person who we all know from the videos that we see during the Sunday service. But I'll let him tell those stories himself. But it was great. The King and Cook team had lunch with some members from the Texas sanctuary yesterday. It was great. The headline on the Atlanta General Constitution is President Donald Trump, VP Mike Pence make history at NRA. And President Donald Trump and Vice President Mike Pence both addressed the National Rifle Association annual meetings and exhibits today. That's today meaning yesterday. The first time a president and vice president have appeared jointly. In fact, it's quite rare for the president and vice president to be in the same place at the same time. Of course, because if something happens, a terrorist incident, something like that, then if both men get killed, then that creates more confusion for the U.S. government. Of course, if both men were to be killed simultaneously, then let's see, it's the Speaker of the House that would take over as president, according to law. So anyway, but I guess they felt safe here. I guess they felt safe here. Now there were the Secret Service was in charge of the security, and so people had to leave their guns behind in order to enter. The NRA did not require people to take their guns off before entering, but the Secret Service did. But the president, vice president, I guess, felt quite safe here in Dallas while the NRA convention was going on. There was a lot of talk about protests, and my wife and I, when we were there yesterday, we looked around, and guess what? Our February event attracted more protesters than the NRA. If you look very, very carefully, you could find a few protesters here. Is few the right word? Yeah, I guess so. Not several, but few. Yeah. But I think we had more protesters at our February event. We love Texas, Trump said after chants of USA, USA died down. Trump ticked off a long list of local politicians to thank and endorse, including Governor Greg Abbott and his one-time opponent, U.S. Senator Ted Cruz, both up for re-election. Boy, that was very rousing, Trump said after sustained applause for Cruz. And then there's a video here about Donald Trump Jr. Shops for knives at the NRA exhibit hall. There was a very large exhibit hall there, and a lot of companies there were exhibiting their products, and Carr, of course, was among them. The Carr Firearms group, actually. And Thompson was there as well, and they had a lot of people there at the Carr Arms booth, and Cook was there talking with customers. USA, USA cranked up again after Trump's comments about patriotism. We have pride in our history and respect for our heritage, he said. We put our hands on our hearts for the Pledge of Allegiance, and we all proudly stand for the national anthem. He wasted little time in blasting fake news CNN and NBC, which he said might be even more distorted, before pivoting to a mention of a CNN report titled "Judge in Manafort Case Says Mueller's Aim is to Hurt Trump." Moving into a condemnation of the ongoing Robert Mueller investigation, he mused, folks, we all fight battles, but I love fighting these battles. He did have kind words for Kanye West, saying his poll numbers among African Americans have recently doubled thanks to his support. Thank you, Kanye. As he did in last year's convention, which was held in Atlanta, Trump stressed his support for the right to bear arms. If we're going to outlaw guns, like so many people want to, Democrats, then we are going to have to outlaw immediately all vans and all trucks, which are now the new form of death for the maniac terrorists. Pence spoke ahead of Trump. President Trump and I came here today mostly to say thanks, Pence said. Thanks for electing a president and a Congress that are making America great again. It's been 15 months of promises made and promises kept, and we're just getting started. He also touted the Trump administration's stance on immigration, border security, and sanctuary cities. When it comes to that big border wall, we're going to build it all. Pence drew loud and sustained applause and brought the crowd to its feet with comments disparaging the media. Firearms in the hands of law-abiding citizens make our communities more safe, not less safe, he said. Today, I want to call on the national media to start telling the whole story. The crowds also heard from Stephen Williford, hailed as the hero who stopped the shooter in a Baptist church in Sutherland Springs, Texas. He had an AR-15, but so did I, Williford said. After the invocation led by Colonel Oliver North, the NRA's chief lobbyist, Chris Cox, started with words of support for families mourning the victims of the February 14th mass shooting in Parkland, Florida. Gun control, he said, is not the answer to combating such crimes. Let's start by taking the no guns allowed stickers off the windows of our schools, he said. That's not a school security plan. It's an invitation to tragedy. Echoing the reel of ads that preceded the speeches, Cox criticized the media, violent movies, and other societal ills, he says, leads to violence. NRA is the only organization in America that gets blamed for problems our members don't commit, he said. The NRA members are the best of the best. We don't just believe in individual freedom and responsibility, we live it every single day. So that was the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And there was a mention here of a school safety, and I actually attended a seminar or panel discussion, I guess you call it, yesterday on school safety. That was part of the NRA convention. NRA has a program they call Safe Schools. Schools Shield, that's it. Schools Shield. School Shield is what they call it, yeah. And I'll be talking more about that later in this morning's broadcast. Let's look at some of the headlines of the articles that Breitbart has on this same speech by the president. Looking now at the one where he says that gun rights originate from God and not government. President Donald Trump took the podium at the NRA convention on May 4th amid massive applause, thanked NRA leadership and the American patriots of the NRA, then launched into a speech reaffirming that our natural rights originate in God. Trump said the people of this hall have never taken our freedom for granted ever, and you've never stopped fighting for our Constitution. He talked of NRA members' commitment to fight for our fight for our sacred rights given to us by God. And then there's the Breitbart here has a video of the entire speech, an hour and 28 minutes. The first half of that is Pence, and then the second half is on President Trump. About 45 minutes he spoke. And so you can go and watch this on Breitbart if you like. They're actually linking to the whitehouse.gov site, or you can go to whitehouse.gov directly and see the speech there. Anyway, I don't want to play the whole thing now. He said, your Second Amendment rights will never, ever be under siege as long as I am president. We believe that our liberty is a gift from our Creator, that no government can ever take it away. Trump stressed his love for country, saying, we have pride in history and respect our heritage. We put our hand on our hearts for the Pledge of Allegiance, and we all proudly stand for the national anthem. The crowd broke into chants of USA, USA, USA. And Trump's words echo the sentiment of our third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson. It was Jefferson who penned the Declaration of Independence, writing, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are equal, are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. All right. So then I want to just do one other story on Breitbart. One where he says, come and take it. While speaking to the NRA convention on Friday, President Trump recalled Gonzales, Texas, and the battle cry of come and take it, to express his determination to protect the American people's rights to keep and bear arms. And Trump said in 1835, soldiers from General Santa Anna's army marched into the little Texas town of Gonzales and ordered those Texans to surrender their small cannon that they relied on to protect their lives and protect their homes. The Texans refused. They were not about to give up their only means of self-defense. In response, Santa Anna's army returned with a larger group of additional people. They had men all over the place, but this time they were met by dozens of Texans who had rushed to Gonzales to defend their rights and their freedom. As Santa Anna's men watched from a distance, those brave Texans raised a flag for all to see. On the banner, they painted a cannon along with 4 words that echoed through the ages. It said, "Come and take it." The crowd broke in deafening applause and broke into a chant of USA, USA, USA. Trump added, like those early Texans, Americans will never, ever surrender. We will never surrender. We will never give up our freedom. Americans were born free. We will live free, and we will die free. Texas, of course, was a republic. There was a Republic of Texas before it became a state, before it joined the United States of America. And in the process of forming the republic, there was a war with Mexico, whereby Texas became independent from Mexico. I think General Santa Anna was the general that was the Mexican general that was trying to prevent that from happening. He was also the general that, of course, attacked the Alamo in San Antonio, which is famous as well. All right, let's take a break, and then I'll come back with more on the NRA convention after this.
Boy, wasn't that fun shooting this Tommy gun today?
It's always fun shooting Tommy guns. This one especially, it's just absolutely gorgeous.
All polished and chromed up. It really looks like $1 million.
Yeah, yeah. Elliot Ness would have loved one of those.
Yeah, and it's available right now in your favorite dealer, and you go pick one up.
Yeah, just have him call your distributor.
I mean, the gun, you know, was initially made way back when, back in the 27 is this one.
Yeah. Model 27.
I was surprised by how quick it knocked down those plates.
Oh, 3.5 second run, under 3.5 second run, knocking down a plate right. 341.
I mean, the gun is heavy. It's about what, 12, 14 pounds, especially with this drum. But it's surprising how quick you can go with it. It would actually make quite a good self-defense rifle at home.
If I climbed in somebody's window and they were aiming that at me, I think I'd get out of there real quick. So.
That sounds about right to me.
Just the intimidation factor alone.
Fire!
At break of
Welcome back to the King's Report for May 5th, 2018. Tim Elder reporting here from Dallas, sitting in for the second King of Cheongguk, Hyung Moon. Just want to mention that one other thing that President Trump did yesterday was that he signed an executive order strengthening religious freedom. So I just want to go through that. I'm reading this from the whitehouse.gov website. America is a nation of believers, and together we are strengthened by the power of prayer, in quotes, quoting President Donald J. Trump. A voice in the White House today, President Donald J. Trump signed an executive order to ensure that the faith-based and community organizations, now this is actually May 3rd, the day before yesterday, that form the bedrock of our society have strong advocates in the White House and throughout the federal government. President Trump has signed an executive order entitled Establishment of a White House Faith and Opportunity Initiative in order to provide recommendations on the administration's policy agenda affecting faith-based and community programs. Provide recommendations on programs and policies where faith-based and community organizations may partner and or deliver more effective solutions to poverty. Apprise the administration of any failures of the executive branch to comply with religious liberty protections under law and reduce the burdens on the exercise of free religion. The executive order creates the White House Faith and Opportunity Initiative within the Executive Office of the President. The initiative will be led by the newly created position of advisor to the White House Faith and Opportunity Initiative and be supported by experts and various community and faith leaders from outside the federal government. All executive departments and agencies that do not have Centers for Faith and Opportunity Initiative will designate a liaison to the initiative. In October 2017, the Department of Justice issued 20 principles of religious liberty to guide the administration's litigation strategy and protect religious freedom. In January 2018, the Justice Department announced a religious liberty update to the U.S. Attorney's Manual, raising the profile of religious liberty cases and directing the designation of a religious liberty point of contact for all U.S. Attorney's offices. In January 2018, the Department of Health and Human Services announced major policy changes protecting freedom of religion inside and outside the government, forming a new Conscience and Religious Freedom Division, providing HHS with the focus it needs to more vigorously and effectively enforce existing laws protecting the rights of conscience and religious freedom, and proposing to more vigorously enforce 25 existing statutory conscience protections for Americans involved in HHS programs in order to protect Americans who have religious or moral convictions related to certain health care services. Translation: abortion, healthcare services. One nation under God. President Trump has publicly stood with people of faith and with those who would advocate for the sanctity of life. And then protecting religious freedom throughout his tenure as president. The president has been a champion for religious liberty and so forth, and it continues on for a little bit more. Well, here, protecting the sanctity of life, the president has been one of the foremost defenders of the sanctity of life in the history of the White House. President Trump quickly reinstated and expanded the Mexico City policy, which prevents $9 billion in foreign aid from being used to fund the global abortion industry and its advocates. President Trump signed H.J. Resolution 43 into law, which overturned the Obama administration's midnight regulation prohibiting states from defunding certain abortion facilities as part of their family planning programs. And President Trump's administration issued guidance to enforce the requirement that taxpayer dollars not support abortion coverage in Obamacare exchange plans. Well, some of this is good, protecting religious liberties and so forth, but making more money available from the government to religious organizations and communities is, what brings about state-run churches. The Sanctuary Church does not receive any funding from government for any of our programs, and we intend to keep it that way. Not that anything's being offered right now, but even if they are, in the future, we will not be accepting those funds from any government agency because churches always have to act in role of the prophet. And the prophet has to speak out oftentimes against the government, because it is the prophet that speaks God's position. It has that vertical connection to God, and the prophet has to guide the government. So you can't be guiding the government, you can't be guiding the president or the leaders of the country if you are taking money from them. Now that's just ethically and morally wrong. Once you start taking money from the government, you become a servant or a slave of the government or employee of the government. You have to start filling all sorts of forms, filling out all sorts of forms, and meeting all these deadlines and regulations, and you can do this, but you can't do that, and this and that and the other. All sorts of requirements coming into existence, and the church becomes a state-run church. So that is the danger here. And some of this I see is good, but some of it, though, I see as being dangerous, as a kind of a hook to try to get more religious organizations into the government fold. But it's good that he's standing up for religious freedom, and we hope that this works out well. All right, then I want to go to the what I mentioned, the school NRA School Shield program. Let me see if I can show this thing here that I have. Oh, it's backwards, isn't it? It's going to come out backwards, so you can't really read it. But anyway, this is a flyer that I received at the seminar yesterday on the School Shield program. It says, engaging communities and empowering leaders to make our schools more secure. For more information, please contact NRA School Shield at this phone number, 844-467-7723. That's 844-467-7723. Or the email is info@nraschoolshield.org. Info@nraschoolshield.org. And on the back, it says each year our nation's schools are entrusted to provide a safe environment for approximately 55 million elementary and secondary school students in public, private, parochial, and independent schools. Families and communities expect schools to keep their children safe from threats. No task is more important than creating a secure learning environment for America's youth. We know school security is a complex issue with no simple single solution. That's why NRA School Shield is committed to addressing the many facets of school security, including best practices in school infrastructure, technology, personnel, training, and policy. Through this multidimensional effort, we engage communities and empower leaders to help make our schools more secure. Use the questions below to start the conversation with your local school leaders about how we can work together to protect our children. And they have a list of 10 questions that I'd like to read, because some of these may be actually useful for some of our viewers here. Question number 1, has our school ever had a vulnerability assessment done? Number 2, does our school work with local law enforcement and emergency responders in crisis planning and training? Number 3, when was our emergency operation crisis management plan last reviewed? And number 4, what types of drills are conducted at our school and at what frequency? Number 5, are all exterior doors of our school locked during instructional hours? Number 6, are all visitors to our school required to check in with the main office? 7, are schools and staff trained on how to identify and report suspicious or concerning behaviors or comments? Number 8, does our school have a behavioral threat assessment team? Number 9, if there is an emergency, how and when are parents and guardians notified? Number 10, do we have designated security personnel assigned to our school? If so, are they armed or unarmed? And then at the end it says our kids are our responsibility. It's not just our duty to protect them, it's our right to protect them. And for more information and resources, visit www.nraschoolshield.org. And there was a discussion that went on for about 1 hour, and we had some security experts, and then they took questions from the audience. And the questions, many of the questions focused on the issue of okay, the NRA is doing this, and we're doing very good, and they have a lot of resources, and they can go into a school and can if the school provide their threat plan, their emergency plan, the experts that the NRA, not the NRA itself, but the experts that the NRA connects them to, will review that plan and assess it and see whether it's up to speed and so forth, and also talk about the drills that they do. So the NRA is offering a lot of resources. Basically, they offer resources. The NRA is not going into schools itself. I should make that clear, but they're connecting schools to experts who can help schools. And a lot of the questions are centered on the fact that, okay, well, we're doing all this good, but when we try to go into our schools and talk to them, they say, oh, NRA? No, I don't want anything to do with that. No, I don't want to take anything from the NRA. How do you get over that? And the ideas that were presented, well, talk to the parents, talk to the PTA. The parents are certainly interested in taking every opportunity for their children to be protected. But it was interesting to me that the NRA is now experiencing some of the things that we have been experiencing over the last decades. That we do a lot of good work, but then they say, "Oh, you're from River Moon. Oh no, I don't have anything to do with that. No, it doesn't matter what good you're doing. Just get out of here." So I felt that there is a possibility for a commonality there, and for a bridge there also, because NRA members are experiencing this. As soon as they say that, oh, I'm from or I'm an NRA member, then there are a lot of people in society today who will just basically walk away, turn their backs and walk away. Even though, as one of the articles said that I read earlier, NRA members are not creating or conducting mass shootings. In fact, the NRA is actually presenting a lot of ways to prevent those kinds of incidents. But the NRA is kind of being targeted in this way. One of the experts who was there yesterday on the panel discussion said that, and he said he had conducted a scholarly study on this, but he said that placing a resource officer, in other words, an armed policeman in the school, reduces the body count by 70%. And he says that if there's just one thing that a school can do, if they're only going to do one thing, that's the one thing that they should do: place an armed resource officer in the school. And the NRA apparently is offering funding for that. They have a program for giving schools funds to do exactly that. So NRA is really doing a good work in terms of reducing school violence, school shootings that have been going on. All right, let's go now to some of the other stories that we have here. The Hawaii situation, I want to go there now and see what's happening there, see if there are any updates there. Yesterday morning, actually, as we were doing this broadcast, things were developing, and I believe things have continued to develop. Yesterday, there was a major quake on the island, of the Big Island, that is. And the situation, I think, is continuing this morning, even as we make this broadcast. Major quake hits Hawaii, prompts further volcano eruptions. A magnitude 6.9 earthquake shook Hawaii's Big Island on Friday, prompting fresh eruptions from a volcano that has been spewing lava near residential areas, forcing hundreds of people to flee. Actually, it was 1,700, I believe, that were forced to evacuate. The U.S. Geological Survey said the quake struck at 12:32 p.m. That was local time, and was centered on the south flank of a Kilauea volcano, which first erupted on Thursday after a series of tremors. This is, of course, Kilauea, of course, has been erupting constantly for quite a long time, for many, many years. But it's been, of course, this week it's become quite worse. This is almost exactly the same location as the deadly 1975 M7.1 quake, USGC said in a tweet. The quake killed 2 people. That quake killed 2 people and injured 28. That was the one in the 75. Another 5.7 magnitude tremor had hit the island earlier on Friday, and authorities said they expect more seismic activity. Quakes have prompted the Kilauea volcano, one of 5 active on the island, to erupt. A drone and video footage showed orange magma gushing up from cracks in the ground and snaking through a wooded area. Molten lava could also be seen bubbling up through cracks on streets in the Leilani Estates and Lanapuna Gardens neighborhood, where residents were ordered to evacuate on Thursday. The area is home to about 1,700 people and 770 structures. The broader district potentially impacted by the threat is home to some 10,000 people. No injuries have been reported, but several homes were said to have been destroyed or badly damaged on Friday, authorities said. Officials urged any remaining residents to evacuate and warned of extremely high levels of toxic fumes. Hawaii Fire Department reports extremely dangerous air quality conditions due to high levels of sulfur dioxide gas in the evacuation area, the Hawaii County Civil Defense Agency said. Elderly, young, and people with respiratory issues need to comply with the mandatory evacuation order and leave the area. Governor David Ige said residents were being housed in community centers until the dangers from Kilauea, one of the world's most active volcanoes, has passed. The lava outbreak came after hundreds of small earthquakes in recent days that followed the collapse of a crater floor on the Pu'o volcanic cone. A 5.0 magnitude earthquake early Thursday south of the cone triggered rockfalls and potential additional collapse of this crater, USGC said. In a short-lived but massive pink plume of ash wafting into the, it sent a massive pink plume of ash wafting into the air. Big Island residents of Janice Way, who moved to Hawaii from California, known for its own high earthquake risk, said the eruption was almost a relief. We've been waiting for a big moment from the crater after so many small earthquakes, she told AFP. Hawaiians and local people have lived here forever, she said. You know what's going on. We have warning systems. Everybody should be prepared. Using his drone, area resident Jeremiah Osuna captured video footage of the lava flow, which he described as a fire curtain that left him feeling shock and awe. It was like if you put a bunch of rocks into a dryer and turned it on. A lot of earth and pressure and fire just moving around, Osuna told AFP. Governor Ige activated the state's National Guard troops and told residents to pay heed to official warnings. He also signed an emergency proclamation releasing disaster funds to the Big Island. In his emergency declaration, the governor noted the current flow was similar to a 1960 eruption in the Kapaho area that caused significant damage. Geologist Janet Babb of the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory told AFP that scientists had been following an intrusion of magma down the rift zone since Monday afternoon in anticipation of a possible eruption. Though the cracks from which lava was emitted had gone dormant, she emphasized that the overall concern and the overall event has not ended. U.S. Senator Brian Schatz of Hawaii and Federal Emergency Management Agency was mobilizing sources as well as monitoring for forest fires, power outages, and water supply issues. Hawaii Island, or the Big Island, is the largest of the 8 main islands that comprise the Pacific U.S. state, an archipelago that includes hundreds of smaller volcanic islands. All right, so good news is that no one has been injured or killed, but the fissures apparently have become dormant, but the situation is not over, and people on Hawaii need to, especially Hawaii Island, the island of Hawaii, need to be very, very careful and be ready to evacuate, and maybe get off the island for a while. Yeah, that might be a good idea. Let's see, the NSA collecting 534 million U.S. calls and texts in a year. Let's see what's going on there. Like I said, there's 534 million. If you compare that to the U.S. population, it doesn't seem like a lot. That's only about 1.5 per person over a year. And that's the official report. Yeah, okay. This is Reuters' story. The U.S. National Security Agency collected 534 million records of phone calls and text messages of Americans last year, more than triple gathered in 2016, a U.S. intelligence agency report released on Friday said. So that's how much they're willing to admit to. The sharp increase from 151 million occurring during a second full year of a new surveillance system established at the spy agency after U.S. lawmakers passed a law in 2015 that sought to limit its ability to collect such records in bulk. The spike in collection of call records coincided with an increased reporting reported on Friday across other surveillance methods, raising questions from the same privacy advocates who are concerned about potential government overreach and intrusion into the lives of U.S. citizens. The 2017 call records tally remained far less than an estimated billions of records collected per day under the NSA's old bulk surveillance system, which was exposed by former U.S. intelligence contractor Edward Snowden in 2013. The records collected by the NSA include the numbers and time of a call or text message, but not their content. So they say. And of course, they never lie, all right? So we can believe. Overall increase in surveillance hauls were both mystifying and alarming coming years after Snowden's leaks, privacy advocates said. The intelligence community's transparency has yet to extend to explaining dramatic increases in their collection, said Robin Green, a policy counsel at the Washington-based Open Technology Institute that focuses on digital issues. The government has not altered the manner in which it uses its authority to obtain call detail records. Timothy Barrett, a spokesman at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, which released the annual report, said in a statement. The NSA has found that a number of factors may influence the amount of records collected, Barrett said. These include the number of court-approved selection terms, which could be a phone number or of someone who is potentially the subject of an investigation, or the amount of historical information retained by phone service providers, Barrett said. We expect this number to fluctuate from year to year, he said. U.S. intelligence officials have said the number of records collected would include multiple calls made to or from the same phone numbers and involved a level of duplication when obtaining the same record of a call from 2 different companies. Friday's report also showed a rise in the number of foreigners living outside the United States who were targeted under a warrantless internet surveillance program known as Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act that Congress renewed earlier this year. That figure increased to 129,000 in 2017 from 106,000 in 2016, the report said, and is up from 89,000 targets in 2013, or a cumulative rise over 5 years of about 45%. The U.S. intelligence agencies consider Section 702 a vital tool to protect national security, but privacy advocates say the program incidentally collects an unknown number of communications that belong to Americans. Yeah. The whole FISA system, FISA, that's the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, needs to be overhauled. President Trump signed a law that says here at the beginning of this year, I think it was actually the end of last year, he signed a law renewing this Section 702 and the whole FISA system. I hope sometime during his presidency he can get to this issue. I know he's dealing with other situations right now, and there's so much that he has to pick through and reform. And right now he's concentrating, I guess, focusing on other things. But the FISA thing was established actually to limit intelligence agencies. It was established in the 1970s after it was discovered that intelligence agencies were overreaching their authority. So the idea was to put a court in charge of overseeing the intelligence agencies. But that court, the FISA court, has not been doing that function, especially after 9/11. It's become just a rubber stamp court. We found out that the FISA court approves 99.98% of all warrant applications that it receives from the FBI. So how can they say that they're conducting a valid supervisory role, an oversight role, if they're just basically rubber stamping all the applications that they get from the FBI? And we don't know what the situation is with the other intelligence agencies. But we have the NSA, we have the CIA, we have the FBI, we have all sorts of intelligence agencies, and this is part of the bloated government that we have. That whole thing needs to be revamped and made much more efficient. I know President Trump is capable of doing it. The problem is whether he has the time and the resources, the political capital to do it. Right now, this is the year for the midterm elections, so I think he's focused on those elections and to increase his support in the Congress. He needs more senators. He needs more members of the House, especially in Pennsylvania. We need to be able to replace Bob Casey, who's a Democratic senator up for re-election this year, replace him with a Republican. And so President Trump has asked, what's his name, Barletta, to run. And we talked about that last Saturday. And I expressed my personal endorsement for Barletta in the upcoming May 15th Pennsylvania primary. So I hope that we can elect Barletta to the U.S. Senate. All right, let's look at some other articles. We're about 2 minutes before 6 o'clock right now, and I like to do the REMA at 6 o'clock. Why don't we go ahead and take our break now? We'll take our break now, 5 minutes, and we'll come back with our REMA after this break.
their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these, when we love the least of these. Break our hearts once again. Help us to remember when we were only children hoping for a friend. Won't you look around? These are the lives that the world has forgotten, waiting for doors of our hearts and our homes to open. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these, when we love the least of these. If not us, who will be like Jesus to the least of these? If not us, tell me who will be like Jesus to the least of these. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love. Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for May 5th, 2018, a Saturday. This is Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of Chanukka, Hyung. Let's go to our Rima now in the Bible. I'm at the book of the Gospel of Mark this morning, chapter 1, verses 16 through 18. Now, as he walked by the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishers. And Jesus said unto them, Come ye after me, and I will make you to become fishers of men. And straightway they forsook their nets and followed him. So they met the Messiah, and they quit their job, and they followed him. Sounds familiar? Yeah, that's what I and a lot of other people did when we first met our true Father. The situation has changed now. Of course, there's much greater foundation, so that people don't need to do that anymore. But in the beginning, when Father was first starting his ministry in America, there was a need for people who would work full time with the Messiah. And so when I remember when I first went to the Barrytown workshop, it was on a Columbus Day long weekend. And at the end of the workshop, I called up my boss, because I had a job at that time in a global pharmaceutical company. So I called up my supervisor and said that, well, I told him the truth. I said that I had met this group that seems to feel that the Messiah is on earth, and as a Christian, I felt it was my responsibility to find out more, and so I wanted to take more time off from the company. And the boss said he was an Irishman, I think probably a Catholic, I imagine. And he said, well, are you going to, if you find out, if you are satisfied this is the real thing, are you going to quit your job or something like that? He said. And I said, yes, I think so. This was a telephone conversation. I was in Barrytown, using their telephone there and calling him. And he says, okay, well, you're young and you have to decide your direction, and so go ahead and take the time that you need. And so anyway, I wound up quitting my job, turning over the company car that had been issued to me, which, to the consternation of some of the leaders in the Unification Church at that time, they were more interested in the car than they were of me, I think, in the beginning. Because it was a nice car, and so so I quit my job and been working for providential companies or organizations ever since, except for 6 months in Korea in 1993, I guess. Yeah, there was a period when I was not in Sigable. Complicated, but anyway, that was a short period. And so that also happened with Jesus, and this was one of the reasons that people called us a cult, right? And said that Philo was brainwashing these young people, because people were quitting school, they were quitting their jobs and everything like that. But look, same thing with Jesus. So was Jesus brainwashing people? Jesus said unto them, "Come ye after me, and I will make you to become fishers of men." That's all he said. Was that a brainwashing statement by Jesus? Was Jesus a cult leader? If you use the same logic that people used against us in the 70s and 80s and onward, that would be the case, wouldn't it? But no, I quit my job then because I had found something that I had been searching for, and I'm sure that these two guys here, Simon and Andrew, also have been searching for something in their hearts, and they recognized that Jesus was offering that something that they had been. I had been searching for a way to do something truly good for the world. And I thought that joining a multinational organization, being employed by a multinational company, a sort of a multinational company that I was working for at that time, that this was the way to do it, that large corporations had all this power, and surely if I could harness that power, then I could do something good for the world, was my naive initial thought after graduating from college. But I soon discovered that was not the case, that the corporation was not trying to benefit the world in the way that I hoped to benefit the world. And so I was looking for something else. And then, the Unification Church came along and had an opportunity to go through a 3-day workshop. And I decided, this is it. This is, working for the Messiah. What could be better for the world than that? And I'm sure that these two brothers, Simon and Andrew, must have felt the same way. And so they made a commitment. Now, the interesting thing with all of the disciples is that after Jesus' crucifixion and death, they basically went back to their old lives. They didn't go out and start, witnessing, and like Jesus had told them to, like he had trained them to. They didn't do that. And so when Jesus was resurrected and spent 40 days on earth, basically gathering them back together and saying, hey, you guys, I got to point you in the right direction. And so then they finally got the idea of what they were supposed to do. They were only with Jesus for 3 years, probably less than that, somewhere between 2 and 3 years maybe. So they definitely did not have the experience that we've been blessed with to follow true parents for decades. So when they saw that Jesus was killed on the cross, executed on the cross, they said, okay, well, it was a nice ride, but that's it. But no, it doesn't end there. And I think once a person is picked up by the Messiah, picked up by God, God actually does not let go. People try to run away. They try to disappear, try to go another direction, but eventually they find that no, God has had hold of their lives all along, and that God is always trying to lead them back to the path that they were on. Many people joined the Unification Church and then left. More people left than remained at the time of Father's Songha. And of course now, all the members of the Family Federation have effectively and in truth left the Unification Church because they have left Father's, they have departed from Father's course. And they are no longer working with True Father. But God still has a hold on them. God still has a hold on their hearts because they experienced that love from True Father at one time or another in their lives. And I'm sure that God will lead them back. And they can come back. The Second King has made clear that there is a path for them to come back to receive the blessing for returning to True Father's authority. And then to restart their lives in the providence. And I hope that people will do that. If anyone is listening to this broadcast now, I would encourage you to, if you are in the Family Federation, I would encourage you to repent and to seek a pathway back to True Father, back to True Father. And it's easy to do that. You can receive the blessing for returning to True Father's authority. And there are many, many people who are capable and willing to give you the information on how to do that. You can go to our new and revamped website, by the way. I hope that people have gone to our website, a new website, sanctuary-pa.org. It's completely been revamped. That happened 2 days ago, I believe. So please go there and you'll be able to find the information that you need in order to return to True Father's authority. And of course, we still have the other websites. What is it? I don't have them on the top of my head right now, so I don't want to give the wrong addresses, but we have several websites now that people can refer to. All right, that's our Rima for this morning. Thank you, Heavenly Father. That was Mark 1, chapter 1, verses 16 through 18. All right, let's take a break, and we'll come back after this with more news from a Tony perspective.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
folks. And look at what I've got here today. My God, take a look at this. This is a BFR in 454 Casull with an octagonal barrel, magna porting, micarta grips. And look at that, it even has my initials on it, JM. Look at that thing of beauty, my God. Pop open the cartridge insertion door, and look at that cylinder spin. The finest revolvers in the world. That's a cannon. That's a cannon. Oh, man. Pretty accurate, though. That's our target. Oh boy! Massive recoil.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, May 5th, 2018. Tim Miller sitting in for the second king of Pechanga on this 20th day in the third month of the 9th year of Chunki. Let's go to the Boston Globe, which is the hometown newspaper for John Kerry. And Kerry is quietly seeking to salvage the Iran deal he helped to craft, says the Boston Globe. Now, remember when the transition was going on, and also the first weeks of the Trump presidency, there was a lot of talk about the Logan Act among Democrats. The Logan Act is an act that was passed in the early days of the American Republic, which prevents private citizens from, or actually makes a felony of, it's a crime and a felony, according to this act, for a private citizen to conduct unauthorized negotiations with a country that has a dispute with the United States. And that's exactly what Kerry is doing. But so let's see whether the Boston Globe will bring up that fact, the Logan Act, all right? Because there were, every time Trump transition officials had contact with a Russian embassy official or ambassador, the Democrats were calling Logan Act, Logan Act, Logan Act. So let's see now, John Kerry, what is he doing? And is the Logan Act being quoted here? Let's see what the Boston Globe says. John Kerry's bid to save one of his most significant accomplishments as Secretary of State took him to New York on Sunday afternoon, 2 weeks ago, where more than a year after he left office, he engaged in some unusual shadow diplomacy with a top-ranking Iranian official. Unusual or illegal? He sat down at the United Nations with Foreign Minister Javad Zarif to discuss ways of preserving the pact limiting Iran's nuclear weapons program. It was the second time in about 2 months that the two had met to strategize over salvaging a deal they spent years negotiating during the Obama administration, according to a person briefed on the meetings. With the Iran deal facing its gravest threat since it was signed in 2015, Kerry has been on an aggressive yet stealthy mission to preserve it, using his deep list of contacts gleaned during his time as top U.S. diplomat to try to apply pressure to Iran No. Try to apply pressure on the Trump administration from the outside. So this is a former Secretary of State working with the foreign minister of a country that definitely has a dispute with the United States. All right, Kerry is working with the Iran foreign minister to apply pressure on the president of the United States, the current president of the United States. This is exactly what the Logan Act was enacted to prevent. That's exactly what it is supposed to prevent. President Trump, who has consistently criticized the pact and campaigned in 2016 on scuttling it, faces a May 12th deadline to decide whether to continue abiding by its terms. Kerry also met last month with German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier, and he's been on the phone with top European Union official Federica Mogherini, according to the source who spoke on condition of anonymity to reveal the private meetings. Kerry has also met with French President Emmanuel Macron in both Paris and New York, conversing over the details of sanctions and regional nuclear threats in both English and French. The rare moves by a former, because it's illegal, the rare moves by a former Secretary of State highlighted the stakes for Kerry personally, as well as for other Obama-era diplomats who are dismayed by what they see as Trump's disruptive approach to diplomacy and who view the Iran nuclear deal as a factor for stability in the Middle East and for global nuclear non-proliferation. But that's not how other people see it, because they see that actually it results in proliferation because it allows Iran to break free at a certain point and start developing its nuclear weapons. And the intelligence from Israel that Israel brought out of Iran recently shows that Iran, although it may have frozen its program for now, has made sure that it will be able to restart that program whenever it wants to. The pact, which came after a marathon negotiating session in Vienna that involved Iran and 6 world powers, lifted sanctions in return for Iran stopping its pursuit of nuclear weapons. No, not stopping though, it's suspending. If that is true, if they have suspended it, it is unusual for it.
NFL is way down in their ratings.
Right.
And you know why?
We got all of a sudden.
Donald Trump believes.
We got something going on here all of a sudden. President Trump breaking in. Okay, we'll try to stop that. This is a video that is on a story that I was going to cover next, but he doesn't want to. The president doesn't want to wait his turn. Well, have to. Okay, there we go. Have to make him wait his turn. All right. Let's see. It's unusual for a former Secretary of State to engage in foreign policy like this as an actual diplomat and quasi-negotiator, said Michael O'Hanlon, a foreign policy expert at the Brookings Institution. Of course, former Secretaries of State often remain quite engaged with foreign leaders, as they should, but it's rarely so issue-specific, especially when they have left office, when they have just left office. Kerry declined to be interviewed for this story. The quiet lobbying campaign by him and others is being conducted below the radar because he and his allies believe a high-profile defense of the deal by prominent Democrats would only backfire and provoke Trump, making it more likely the president would pull the United States out of the deal. Part of the equation is if Ernest Moniz, the former U.S. Energy Secretary, or John made a bold statement, Trump is crazy and he might do the opposite just to spite them, said one source who has worked with Kerry. You're liable to spur this guy in a direction you don't want him to go in just to be spiteful. Moniz was a key part of the negotiating team, meeting with the Iranian counterpart as they determined some of the technical scientific details. A former Obama White House official said there is little to be gained by aiming the effort directly at Trump. At least from our network, you're not going to find message aimed at him directly, said the official. It would be counterproductive. Anything with our brand attached to it, he'll run in the opposite direction. Democratic lawmakers in Congress also have been relatively quiet, and not all share Kerry's belief that the deal is essential for preventing a nuclear arms race in the volatile region. Yeah, not all, even among Democrats, not all share Kerry's belief. It's his personal belief. But he's out of office. He had his chance to make the world in his image, all right? He had that chance. But now he's out of office. The American people have spoken. They don't want Obama's foreign policy anymore. They want Trump's foreign policy. But now Kerry, and perhaps taking instruction from Obama, I don't know. Kerry now is doing everything he can to undermine Trump. This is exactly what the Logan Act made illegal. Kerry has quietly tried to bolster his support in Congress. In recent weeks, he's placed dozens of phone calls and, often with Moniz by his side, has lobbied members of Congress, including House Speaker Paul Ryan, while he is not negotiating. As he did as Secretary of State, he is attempting through quiet advocacy to preserve what he accomplished. Kerry supporters see in his campaign some of his trademark traits, especially his unflagging energy, even in the face of potential failure. Critics see something else, a former office holder working with foreign officials to potentially undermine the policy aims of a current administration. Yeah. The White House did not respond to a request for comment. So let's see here. And I want to go now to the Wikipedia article on the Logan Act. Since it looks like Boston Globe forgot to check this, let's remind the Boston Globe what the Logan Act is about. Okay, the Logan Act, enacted January 30, 1799, is a United States federal law that criminalizes negotiation by unauthorized persons with foreign governments having a dispute with the United States. That sounds like what Kerry's doing, right? Negotiation by unauthorized persons with foreign governments having a dispute with the United States. Iran has a dispute with the United States. The intent behind the act is to prevent unauthorized negotiations from undermining the government's position. That's what Kerry's doing, undermining the government's position. The act was passed following George Logan's unauthorized negotiation with France in 1798 and was signed into law by President John Adams on January 30, 1799. The act was last amended in 1994, changing the penalty for violation from fine $5,000 to fine under this title. This appears to be the only amendment to the act. Violation of the Logan Act is a felony. Only two people have ever been indicted on charges of violating the act. One in 1802 and the other in 1852. Neither was convicted of violating the act. So the Logan Act here was basically a response to an effort by a Philadelphia Quaker named George Logan to try to negotiate directly with the French government. This was a big scandal at the time in foreign affairs because Logan, a Democratic Republican, was trying to thwart the policy of the Federalists who controlled both houses of Congress and the White House. So this is what Kerry's doing is illegal. It's a pretty bold-faced, a flagrant violation of law. And it's exactly what the Democrats are accusing the Trump people of doing during the transition and in the early weeks of Trump's presidency. Oh, someone spoke with the Russian ambassador. Logan Act, Logan Act, Logan Act. This is what they were chanting. And now Kerry's doing exactly the same thing, but he doesn't care because he's above the law. After all, he's a member of the establishment. Well, the president has a week now to decide what to do with the Iran deal. And this will be the last chance that he has to pull the U.S. out of that deal prior to the midterm elections. All right, let's take a break now. We'll come back with more news from a Tony perspective after this.
have fun shooting this Tommy gun today?
It's always fun shooting Tommy guns. This one especially. It's just absolutely gorgeous.
All polished and chromed up. It really looks like $1 million.
Yeah. Elliot Ness would have loved one of those.
Yeah, and it's available right now in your favorite dealer, and you go pick one up.
Yeah, just have him call your distributor.
I mean, the gun, was initially made way back when, back in the 27 is this one.
Yeah, model 27.
I was surprised by how quick it knocked down those plates.
Oh, 3.5 second run, under 3.5 second run, knocking down a plate right. 341.
I mean, the gun is heavy. It's about, 12, 14 pounds, especially with this drum, but it's surprising how quick you can go with it. It would actually make quite a good self-defense rifle at home.
If I climbed in somebody's window and they were aiming that at me, I think I'd get out of there real quick. So
that sounds about right to me.
Just the intimidation factor alone.
Fire!
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, May 5th, 2018. Let's go now to a story about President Trump proposing a race summit between Colin Kaepernick and Kanye West. That should be interesting. This is people politics. Didn't realize that People magazine had a politics section. But anyway, I guess things change. President Donald Trump has given the green light to multiple meetings with athletes and musical artists to discuss race. Cleveland-based pastor Darrell Scott, an outside advisor to the White House, tells People. He is 100% for it, says Scott, who spoke with Trump for about 20 minutes in the Oval Office following an outdoor ceremony at the White House for Thursday's National Day of Prayer. He was very enthusiastic about it. Kanye West, who recently had a Twitter love fest with Trump, has been invited, says Scott, along with former NFL star Colin Kaepernick and other athletes and musicians of multiple races and ethnicities. It's not going to be a black-only event, says Scott. It will be a melting pot. Kaepernick, of course, is the former San Francisco 49ers quarterback who famously initiated a wave of protests by professional athletes in 2016 when he knelt during the national anthem before NFL games as a protest against injustice against African Americans, especially police shootings of unarmed black men and teens. Trump, as a presidential candidate, vilified Kaepernick, saying maybe he should find a country that works better for him. And later, as president, Trump said players who kneel for the anthem should be fired. While details of the meetings will be ironed out next week, it's expected that there will be a musicians summit followed by a gathering of athletes in the early summer, with both held at the White House, said Scott. The idea has been on the drawing board for quite some time now and got a boost following last week's Trump-West Twitter exchange, the pastor adds. Scott expects Trump will be in attendance. We don't want to sanitize it. I want people from the left to attend. I want it to get heated, but I want it to be respectful, said Scott. Well, that may be difficult. I don't know. They're not very respectful these days. I want them to see and know the Donald Trump I know, and they will say, this guy isn't who I've been led to believe he is. Scott says he's also working with Trump's son-in-law and advisor, Jared Kushner, on prison reform and on a White House-backed plan to revitalize poor urban neighborhoods. On Saturday, Scott will be meeting with Trump in Cleveland for a fundraiser and roundtable on revitalization efforts, the pastor says. Okay, Andrew Giuliani, an aide to White House Office of Public Liaison and son of Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani, is organizing the summits with Scott. The pastor, who has reached out to West through an intermediary, says the singer is aware of it, and we are waiting from other artists as well. Jim Brown, who played in the NFL for the Cleveland Browns, will be involved, as well as Evander Holyfield, Herschel Walker, and Mike Tyson, says Scott. These are guys on the president's side. Wow, Mike Tyson on the president's side. In addition to his attacks on Copernic, Trump has been slammed for some of his statements involving race, characterizing African-American countries as S-hole countries in a January meeting with lawmakers in the White House, and saying on the campaign trail that African-Americans, Hispanics are living in hell because it's so dangerous. Last August, Trump defended white nationalists rallying in Charlottesville, Virginia, saying some were very fine people. That controversial comment drew howls of protest. Cleveland Cavaliers basketball star LeBron James decrying that Trump's comments made hate fashionable again. And for years, Trump falsely stated that President Barack Obama was born in Kenya. Falsely stated. I don't know if we'll ever know the truth for that. Scott says that Trump envisions the summit as a healing mechanism. The president said that this will go a long way in bringing everybody together. He wants to bring the nation together. Well, yeah, I'm sure he does. We'll see if this comes off. That's an interesting idea. But if it comes off, it will boost his popularity even more. And it's up to, what is it, up to now 51% that the president has now. It's a highest it's been in a while. That's the daily Rasmussen poll. Other polls that have different numbers. I want to go to this story about Argentina. Argentina's interest rates climbing to 40%. This is the BBC news article. Argentina's central bank has raised interest rates for the third time in 8 days. 8 days, as the country's currency, the peso, continues to fall sharply. On Friday, the bank hiked rates to 40% from 33.25%. That's a big hike. A day after they were raised from 30.25. A week ago, they were raised from 27.25. The rises are aimed at supporting the peso, which has lost a quarter of its value over the past year. So the idea is that if the central bank raises rates, then foreign investors will want to invest in that country because they're a very high rate of return. At 33%? How long would it take to double your money with that? I think about 4 or 5 years. I think so. The idea then is that foreign investors will then buy the country's currency, in this case the peso, Argentinian peso, in order to invest in Argentina, and that will then increase the value of the peso on the foreign exchange market. But apparently, they're having a difficulty doing that. Analysts say the crisis is escalating and looks set to continue. Argentina is in the middle of a pro-market economic reform program under President Mauricio Macri, who is seeking to reverse use of years of protectionism and high government spending under his predecessor, Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner. Inflation, a perennial problem in Argentina, was at 25% in 2017, the highest rate in Latin America except for Venezuela, which of course Venezuela now is at 18,000%. This year, the central bank has set an inflation target of 15% and has said it will continue to act to enforce it. Despite the twin rate rises, the peso, which was fixed by law at parity with the US dollar before Argentina's economic meltdown in 0102, is now trading at about 22 to the dollar. So in other words, it takes 22 Argentinian pesos to purchase $1. So the value of the peso has fallen that much. Conversely, $1 US will purchase 22 Argentinian pesos, whereas before what they saw the economic meltdown in 2001-2002, it was 1-to-1. It was parity, and by law it was set at that, but they weren't able to maintain that. The crisis looks set to continue unless the government steps in to reassure investors that it will take more aggressive steps to fix Argentina's economic vulnerability, said Edward Glossop, Latin America economist at Capital Economics. Risks to the peso have been brewing for a while. Large twin budget and current account deficits, a heavy dollar debt burden, entrenched high inflation, and an overvalued currency. The real surprise is how quickly and suddenly things seem to be escalating. Mr. Glossop said a sizable fiscal tightening was planned for 2018, but it might not but it might now need to be larger and prompter. Unless or until that happens, the peso is likely to remain under pressure, and there remains a real risk of a messy economic adjustment. Argentina's president is a controversial figure in a country that is still strongly divided ideologically. Now, Argentina used to be one of the top 10 economies in the world back in the 1920s, about 100 years ago. But populism and socialism took over, and they've come to where they are now. But among international investors, he is unanimously praised. Since coming to office, he moved swiftly to end capital controls and reestablish trust in economic data coming from Argentina. However, he is not winning a crucial battle in the country, the one against inflation. Markets are taking notice, and there has been a sell-off of the peso. The opposition wants to stop Macri from removing subsidies in controlled prices, such as energy and utility tariffs, which may bring more inflation in the short term, but could help bring it down from above 20% now to about 5% by 2020. Friday was a day for emergency measures, a massive hike to 40% in interest rates, and a commitment to bring down government spending. Investors still believe Macri has a sound plan to recover Argentina, but they are not convinced he can see it through. So one thing is to have the plan, the other thing is to have the ability to execute it, to see it through. All right. Let's look at this other story here on the side of BBC. The U.S. Navy resurrects second fleet in Atlantic to counter Russia. I didn't see this on any of the U.S. portals, news portals, but looks like an interesting article here. Let's go through it. It says, U.S. Navy has said it will reestablish its second fleet as Russia becomes more assertive. Chief of Naval Operations Admiral John Richardson said the fleet disbanded in 2011 would oversee forces on the U.S. East Coast and North Atlantic. He said the National Defense Strategy, published earlier this year, made it clear that the era of great power competition had returned. The strategy makes countering Russia and China a priority. The fleet, which was disbanded for cost-saving and structural reasons, will be based in its previous home, Norfolk, Virginia. Our national defense strategy makes clear that we're back in an era of great power competition as the security environment continues to grow more challenging and complex, Admiral Richardson said in an announcement on board the USS George H.W. Bush at Norfolk. That's why today we're standing up Second Fleet to address these changes, particularly in the North Pacific. Wow, this just came out an hour ago, and when did he make this announcement? I guess it was yesterday. It doesn't say exactly when. The reestablishment of the U.S. Second Fleet is part of a wider strategy of reorienting the U.S. Armed Forces toward a world of renewed big power competition and away from the counterinsurgency campaigns they've been fighting over recent decades. So good news, bad news here. That is that the counterinsurgency campaign, that would be the war on terror. And the Chengdu Constitution, of course, outlaws wars against non-state actors. And the war on terror is certainly one of those, war against non-state actors. A war on poverty, war on hunger, war on obesity. What else do we have a war on? War on drugs. All these are wars on non-state actors that would be outlawed under the Chengdu Constitution. So the shift away from a counterinsurgency focus to, another focus is good news in that sense. But on the other sense, though, it's bad news. The bad news is that the people who want to have more wars, the neocons, are getting their way. And they want a war with Russia. And I'm not sure why they want a war with Russia. China, I could see. The United States probably will have to fight a war with China at some point. Because China has made very clear that and Xi Jinping has made very clear that he intends China to become the preeminent superpower in the world by 2050. And he intends to do that by, you know, sucking anything out of U.S. that he can. The technology, the economy, anything that it can. Russia, I'm not so sure about. You know, I think Russia's strategic objectives and strategic vision is much more limited. And what I see here, though, is if these people are preparing to counter Russia, basically they're preparing to impose their new world order. You know, Bush's new world order, which he used. He used that term, and Kissinger used that term. That, of course, is a world order that is under a world government. Russia doesn't want to go along with that world government. I think that is why they are these neocons are really pushing this so-called era of renewed competition among big powers. The existing pattern of U.S. naval operations is also due to change significantly. U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis insists that he wants less predictable deployments of shorter duration. Experts say a carrier strike group is likely to be deployed more frequently in European waters. See, that would be. We don't want to go to war with Russia, though. We do not want to go to war with Russia. But this is what the neocons are preparing for, and what they are not just preparing for, but pursuing. And that's unfortunate, very, very unfortunate. And so this is a bad sign for the world that the U.S. Navy resurrecting the Second Fleet in the Atlantic. I'm sure the people in Norfolk are happy, but for the world at large, it is definitely not a good sign at all. All right, let's try to hit a couple more stories before we go to our next break. Let's see here. What looks interesting here? And of course, the Antifa group hangs Trump in effigy, calls for revolutionary violence. How, you know, they say, oh, the NRA is responsible for all the violence. Meanwhile, we got Antifa calling for revolutionary violence. Let's see how many Hollywood stars and Democratic Party leaders are criticizing Antifa for advocating revolutionary violence. Shall we? Shall we try to count those? Are you ready? Have you got your calculators ready? Count how many Democratic leaders and Hollywood stars are going to criticize Antifa for this advocacy of violence. LA Antifa group, see it's right there next door to Hollywood, hangs Trump in effigy, calls for revolutionary violence against the capitalist state. Okay, I haven't seen it. Let's see, Hollywood actors. How many Hollywood actors here? An Antifa group in Los Angeles celebrated May Day by holding a small march, hanging a Trump effigy, and advocating for revolutionary violence against the capitalist state in order to create real political power. Okay. We must carry out military actions against the enemies of the people, a member of the LA cell of the Red Guards said in a speech published on the group's blog. How come that blog is not being taken down? We've obtained the transcript from a May Day speech given by Antifa group in LA. This is just one of the many quotes in which they call for revolutionary violence. Full report with more quotes here. I see Far Left Watch. Oh, I see this is a blog by the Far Left Watch. No, this is the Red Guards blog. The Red Guards is a Maoist group that hopes to duplicate in the United States the anarchy and terror Chairman Mao's Red Guards inflicted on China during the Cultural Revolution in the 1960s and 1970s. Well, of course, yes, we'd want that, wouldn't we? That sounds like a good idea. Mao killed 100 million, 200 million people, and now these folks want to duplicate that? why don't they duplicate the Great Leap Forward, where we can have steel furnaces in our backyards, and everybody produce steel. This is what they tried to do in China. Of course, it failed miserably, and a lot of people starved to death. The group also identifies as anti-fascist and has cells throughout the United States. Hundreds of thousands of leftists throughout the world mobilized for the annual International Workers' Day on May 1 to advocate for various social justice causes and celebrate communism. While May Day protests in France, Turkey, Puerto Rico, and elsewhere turned violent, Wednesday's protests in the United States tended to be relatively calm, as PJ Media reported, which is this publication now. 22 police cruisers in Portland were vandalized yesterday. Additionally, 3 Red Guard members in Charlotte, North Carolina, and 4 Red Guards members in Kansas City, Missouri were arrested for protest-related shenanigans. However, most American May Day protesters conducted their far-left activities in a peaceful manner. The same cannot be said for the rhetoric of the protesters. The violent Antifa group has escalated the rhetoric and is now calling for military actions against their enemies, i.e. anyone to the right of Karl Marx. We are calling on FBI Los Angeles to investigate Antifa. Full report here. That was a tweet again by Far Left Watch. In the speech, the group advocated for targeted political violence against their perceived enemies and openly encouraged armed insurrection against the U.S. government. So let's see. As I said, we're still trying to count the Hollywood celebrities that are coming out against this. I don't see any so far. Or the Democratic Party leaders coming out against this so far. I haven't seen it. If this had been on the right, you know, among conservatives during the Obama administration, wow, you know, everybody, you know, Michael Moore, who else, you know, all those people, they would have been, you know, they've been crying, oh, no, racist. But because it's the left, everybody's silent. Because they're actually supporting it. They want this also, armed insurrection against the U.S. government. Via Far Left Watch, here are some of the key quotes from the Red Guard's speech in Los Angeles. And here are some of the quotes. Yeah. We stand in solidarity with the Red Guards and principally Maoist collectives who are working towards the creation of a Maoist party. We stand in solidarity with the Maoist parties across the world who are committed to building socialism and fighting revisionism through people's war. Here they make clear that they seek to militarize the masses and create an army. What needs to be done is the concentric construction of the 3 weapons of revolution: the Maoist Party, the Maoist People's Army, and the Maoist United Front. What needs to be done is to militarize the masses and all the pre-party Maoist formations. So here they're actually showing that they've actually studied the history of the Chinese Communist Party. 3 weapons of revolution. The Maoist Party, of course, the Communist Party of China, the Maoist People's Army, that would be the People's Liberation Army, and the Maoist United Front. Now, the Maoist United Front is a situation where they allow other parties and other people to exist outside of the Communist Party, but then they form a united front with those people and parties. And the Communist Party, of course, is in control of that united front. So basically, they are co-opting others into the Communist Party, to the Communist Party movement, while maintaining the sort of the image of diversity. Saying, "Oh no, we're not trying to take over the world. We're just one party among many. We're just a minority." And the Communist Party is a minority. You know, they only have about, even in China, they only have about 10% of the population. And even in Soviet Soviet Union, they had something like 10% or less of the population was actually members of the Communist Party. But through this united front approach, and by controlling other organizations and parties through this united front approach, they're able to impose their dictatorship. And so this united front is one of their weapons of revolution, and that is true. And we need to be very, very careful of that, because people tend to get co-opted into the Communist Party sometimes without knowing it. Their leaders know it, but the rank and file don't know it. So I would say that the Democratic Party today sounds to me like it is a part of the United Front of the Maoist Party. I would say that, yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing that they do. And this kind of thing being held in LA, in California, and Democratic leaders not speaking out against it, shows to me that, yeah, the Democratic Party is a part of this Maoist United Front. And we had an article several days ago how more and more political candidates this year are running as socialists, calling themselves socialists, actually welcoming that that label. So the Maoist United Front is growing here in the United States. Here they openly call for military actions against their enemies, basically anyone who is not a communist. Well, also not a communist, but also not a member of their United Front. We must prepare today, yesterday, and tomorrow for the prolonged confrontation, the protracted war against the capitalist state. We must carry out military actions against the enemies of the people. I think, you know, their language shows that they are working with people in the Chinese Communist Party. I said that they had studied the history of the Chinese Communist Party, but I think actually it's more than that. They are actually working with people in the Chinese Communist Party to create a Maoist party in the United States and to create Chinese-style communism in the United States. Then they declare war on a bunch of different groups of people and follow that up with several quotes about how they are committed to revolutionary violence. Our country's working class knows only two roads, barbarism or socialism, and both require violence, but only in the latter is that violence revolutionary and mastered by the proletariat, its party, and the masses. See, that language, barbarism or socialism, the use of the word barbarism shows me that they are connecting with the Chinese Communist Party. Our task is clear. Only through revolutionary violence can the masses create real political power. Of course, when they say masses, they're actually talking about the leaders of the Chinese Communist Party. As Mao Zedong said, the Chinese Communist Party realizes that the political power comes from the barrel of a gun, and the Communist Party needs to control the guns so that the people at large cannot point them at the Communist Party. So when he says masses, we need to understand that what they're referring to is not what we think of as the masses. They're thinking of the members of the Communist Party, and especially the leaders of the Communist Party. That's what the masses are. The masses are fighting back, and we will guide them toward victory. Guide, you see, guide them toward victory. Guide is another word that the Chinese Communist Party uses often, because North Korean Workers' Party as well uses the word guide as well. You know, Kim Jong-un goes to various factories and so forth and gives on the spot guidance, because in the ideology of Marx, and more than Marx, actually Mao, the role of the Communist Party is to guide the masses. It's a kind of a condescending view of the masses. The masses are ignorant, but we can guide them because we are educated, because we have in this ideology. So the word guide is another trigger to me, showing that this is connected to the Chinese Communist Party. Here's a brief lesson on Chairman Mao's Cultural Revolution, courtesy of the Chinese historian Song Young-yi, who said the widespread phenomenon of mass killings of the time consisted of 5 types. Mass terror or mass dictatorship encouraged by the government. Victims were humiliated and then killed by mobs or forced to commit suicide on streets or other public places. They had what was called People's Court. People's Court. That's I know a popular program in America, but the People's Court in China, and I think in other communist countries as well. I think Soviet Union as well. I didn't study the Soviet Union so much, but China, I did. And People's Court would be basically where a bourgeois person or a capitalist or an intellectual would be put up on a stand, and then people would be encouraged to shout out criticisms of that person, and eventually that person would have to make a self-criticism, and then eventually he'd be executed. But it was a very gruesome thing. A direct killing of unarmed civilians by armed forces, pogroms against traditional class enemies being intellectuals, and of course, religious figures, people of religion, and anyone with money, bourgeois. These type of people are all classified as class enemies. Programs against traditional class enemies by government-led perpetrators such as local security officers, and militias. And number 4, killing as part of a political witch hunts. A huge number of suspects of alleged conspiratorial groups were tortured to death during investigations. And this is one of the characteristics of communist groups. This happened especially in Japan a lot, in the Japanese Communist Party, where within especially during the 60s and 70s, within the communist sort of cells, there was a disagreement, and disagreements often turned violent, and they would kill each other. They would actually kill each other. And summary execution of captives, that is, disarmed prisoners from factional armed conflicts. Factional armed conflicts, that's what factional means, the factions, different factions of the Communist Party or the communist movement. They break into factions and then they kill each other. The most frequent forms of massacres were the first 4 types, which were all state-sponsored killings. The degree of brutality in the mass killings of the Cultural Revolution was very high. Usually the victims perished only after first being humiliated, struggled, and then imprisoned for a long period of time. Because the death toll is considered a Chinese state secret, no one knows for sure how many people died during the Cultural Revolution. Estimates by various scholars range from 500,000 to 8 million. Well, okay, during the Cultural Revolution, but then there was the people who died of starvation and so forth during the Great Leap Forward. There was the people who died during the Long March. And there was just people who died during the whole 30s and 40s period when the Communist Party was trying to take power. So all told, at least 100 million people were killed by Mao Zedong. It's not hard to see why far left watch considers the Red Guards, which would like to see that horrific history repeated in the United States, to be a legitimate threat to public safety. Citizens can submit a tip about FLW's investigation to the FBI. So yeah, it is a legitimate. I would say that it is a legitimate to public safety. We have Islam and the Islam terrorists, but we also have these Chinese Red Guards. And I would say, go ahead, put the name China on them, Chinese Red Guards. This is one of the, we have 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, right? So we need to watch out for all 4 all the time. And this is definitely one of them. This is definitely one of them. The Chinese Communist Party trying to infiltrate the United States and establish their brand of a communism that is a Xi Jinping thought, a communism for a new age, to say, to establish that, and to bring about the Cultural Revolution in the United States, and the killings that happened during that revolution, bring that to the United States. These folks are serious. These folks are serious, and we need to take them seriously. This is one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that we definitely need to be watching. All right, we'll take a break now, and we'll come back in a few minutes with more news from a Tony Book perspective.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear the hearts beating. with me? Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these, when we love the least of these. Break our hearts once again. Help us to remember when we were only children hoping for a friend. Won't you look around? These are the lives that the world has forgotten, waiting for doors of our hearts and our homes to open. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, May 5th, 2018. Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyung Moon, and reporting here from Dallas, Texas, where the king has been attending the NRA convention that is, began yesterday and is continuing today and tomorrow. And then he'll be making his way back to Pennsylvania after that. This time, I wanted to use this time to go into this article about Justice Kennedy's potential retirement from the Supreme Court. This is on BloombergQuint.com. It's a Bloomberg article. After 30 years of pivotal decisions on the U.S. Supreme Court, Justice Anthony Kennedy is about to make his biggest one yet. For the second straight year, Kennedy, 81, is the focus of retirement speculation as the court approaches the late June end of its term. Interesting that they're not speculating so much on Ruth Bader Ginsburg, of course, who is the most far left of all the justices. And basically, I think, of course, the left, they don't have the advantage of prayer. They don't believe in God, so they don't have the advantage of prayer. But they're doing everything equivalent to prayer to keep Ruth Bader Ginsburg alive, or they call her RBG, because her departure from the court would be a seismic change, for sure, because anyone who replaces her during the Trump administration will be quite a bit more conservative than she is. Kennedy is in the middle. Like it says here, pivotal decisions over the last 30 years, because he has been the pivot. He has been the sort of in the middle, sometimes siding with conservatives, sometimes siding with liberals. A retirement by the court's swing justice would give President Donald Trump his second Supreme Court vacancy to fill before the Republicans' Senate majority goes on the November election ballot. It also would drop a political bomb into what is already one of the country's most divisive eras since the Civil War. Though he has given no public indication he plans to depart, advocates on both sides are wondering whether Kennedy's age and Republican roots could lead him to do so. It could trigger a rancorous confirmation battle and open the court to a sharp and probably enduring turn to the right. A Trump-appointed successor could create the 5-member majority that legal conservatives have envisioned for decades. The reconstituted court could overturn long-standing precedents, including the 1973 Roe v. Wade abortion rights ruling. How far it goes would probably depend on Chief Justice John Roberts, who sometimes tempers his conservative leanings to try to protect the court's institutional standing. Whether Kennedy will retire is something known to at most a small handful of people. Former law clerks say they can only speculate, questioning even whether the justice himself knows what he will do. What faint signals Kennedy has sent point toward at least another year on the bench. He has hired his law clerks for the Supreme Court's next term, and as usual, will spend July teaching a law school course in Salzburg, Austria. From the bench, he has been as engaged as ever. I thought he looked great during the argument, said lawyer Carter Phillips, who has argued more than 75 cases before the court, including an antitrust matter involving China on April 24th. So I don't see anything specific as a health issue that would cause him to walk away. Nor has Kennedy shown any obvious signs of slowing down in his opinion writing. Although he has issued only one majority opinion this term, a decision that curbed human rights lawsuits, it was an unusually complicated ruling that required him to cobble together a majority out of a splintered court. Kennedy's most significant opinions are probably yet to come. He could cast the deciding vote in many of the court's biggest remaining issues, including clashes over Trump's travel ban, partisan gerrymandering, and the speech rights of people who oppose gay marriage. Kennedy has been the court's pivot point since 2006. He sided with the court's conservative wing to loosen campaign finance rules in the Citizens United case and to invalidate a core part of the Voting Rights Act. He joined with the liberals to legalize gay marriage and for the most part has backed abortion access. Justice Kennedy is the most influential justice in the history of the Supreme Court, and it's probably not even close, said Michael Klarman, who teaches constitutional history at Harvard Law School. It's almost hard to think of areas where the court divides 5-4 and Justice Kennedy is not the deciding vote. Kennedy himself succeeded a swing voter on the court in 1988 when the Senate confirmed him to take the seat of Justice Lewis Powell. The appointment came only after President Ronald Reagan's controversial first nominee, Robert Bork, was rejected by the Senate, and his second nominee, Douglas Ginsburg, stepped aside over reports of past marijuana use. Wow. Today, would they reject a Supreme Court nominee for marijuana use? Maybe not. A Trump nomination to fill the Kennedy seat could lead to a confirmation fight as rancorous as the one over Bork. But unlike with Bork, Republicans control the Senate 51-49 and could confirm a nominee without any Democratic support. Democrats are trying to take control of the Senate in November, though they face a tough fight. Potential high court nominees would include Washington-based federal appeals court Judge Brett Kavanaugh, a former Kennedy clerk with close ties to the justice. Trump could also consider 3 federal judges he interviewed before selecting Neil Gorsuch to fill an earlier vacancy: William Pryor of Alabama, Thomas Hardiman of Pennsylvania, and Amul Thapar of Kentucky. Supreme Court justices typically reveal retirement plans as the court nears the end of its term. The most recent justice to step down, John Paul Stevens, made his announcement on April 9th, 2010. The previous year, Justice David Souter revealed his plans publicly on May 1. Other justices, including Sandra Day O'Connor in 2005, Thurgood Marshall in 1991, and Powell in 1987, waited until the court had issued its final opinions in late June. Conservative groups are already making plans to back any Trump nominee. The Judicial Crisis Network, which spent $7 million on Gorsuch's nomination, is preparing a similar campaign on behalf of the next nominee. That's likely to include television ads targeting wavering senators, including Democrats seeking re-election in Trump-friendly states. We basically know it is always our job to be ready for a vacancy, said the group's general counsel, Carrie Severino. She pointed to a dramatic ratcheting up of the partisan opposition to Trump's lower court nominees. Liberals are hoping Kennedy will stay, and in some cases practically begging him, please don't go, the New York Times said in an April 28th editorial. Elizabeth Wydra, president of the Progressive Constitutional Accountability Center, said that staying would be the best way for Kennedy to protect his accomplishments in the court. Kennedy is one of the best stewards of his own legacy, Wydra said. I believe that Kennedy values the court as an institution as much as the Chief Justice does, and therefore will be loath to hand off his legacy and the role of the court to this president. Well, we'll see what happens. You know, and God is in charge, actually. God is actually ultimately in charge. God will sometimes pull someone into retirement. Maybe RBG. Maybe RBG. Yeah. That would be something. If Ruth Bader Ginsburg were to leave the stage, as they say, that would put the left into full panic mode. It would be DEFCON 4 for them then. Wow. All right, let's look in at on John McCain's health. A frail John McCain has been receiving a stream of visitors and good wishes at his Arizona ranch as he confronts the aftermath of brain cancer treatment and surgery. Of course, he cast the deciding vote in the failed attempt to repeal Obamacare, and he's been doing a lot of other things. He's very much of a neocon, although he is a former prisoner of war and all that, but he is not serving God's providence in the United States today, that's for sure. Former Vice President Joe Biden sat with McCain for 90 minutes Sunday, according to people close to both men. Biden followed McCain's closest friends, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina and retired Connecticut Senator Joe Lieberman, who visited McCain at the Mayo Clinic 2 weeks ago. McCain's daughter, Megan, tweeted Friday that she was heading to her father's side. Going home to Arizona to be with my family, she tweeted. Thank you all again for your prayers, patience, and understanding and compassion during this time. It means the world to me and my entire family. So it sounds like the end is coming, doesn't it? McCain, 81, had hoped to return to the Senate, where he's served since 1987. He has been unable to do so after cancer treatment and surgery for an intestinal infection last month. Despite that, he's finished work on a new book being released May 22, The Restless Wave, and he continued to advocate for a return to the days when partisans could disagree without demonizing each other. I'd like to see us recover our sense that we're more alike than different, McCain said in audio excerpts from his book reported by National Public Radio. McCain has amplified his call for more civil politics since his diagnosis in July with glioblastoma. It is the same rare and aggressive brain cancer that felled his friend, Democratic Senator Edward Kennedy, at age 77 in 2009, and Biden's son, Beau, at 46 in 2015. There has been an increase in brain cancer, yep, and people are linking it to the use of cell phones. He hasn't been seen in public since December, just before he was hospitalized for a viral infection at Walter Reed Medical Center in Washington. He then returned home to Arizona to recover and undergo physical therapy and continue cancer treatment at the Mayo Clinic in Phoenix. On December 17th, his office issued a news release saying he was looking forward to returning to Washington in January. McCain did not return. He has primarily been staying at his family ranch south of Sedona, Arizona, a sprawling and secluded ranch house along tree-lined Oak Creek, where he loves to have family gatherings and barbecue for friends. His daughter, Megan, was married there in November to Ben Domenech, publisher of the online political and cultural magazine, The Federalist. The senator has been known to lead nature tours featuring his extensive knowledge of dozens of species of birds on the property. McCain's family and staff have kept news of his condition and treatment private, with his office routinely saying it has no new information to share. In mid-April, it was announced that he had been hospitalized for intestinal surgery, needed to stem an infection related to diverticulitis, a condition where the colon develops small bulges that can sometimes become infected. At week's end, McCain was recuperating, eating well, and enjoying the ranch at full bloom, according to a person close to him. The visits by Graham and Lieberman were confirmed to the Associated Press by people knowledgeable about the meetings, but who spoke on condition of anonymity to respect the family's privacy. His wife, Cindy McCain, tweeted April 23rd that he had been released from the hospital, but no official word came from his Senate office. Well, this article reads to me as if the writer is anticipating that McCain may be about to pass. That's the impression that I get from this article. And that these people, Biden and Lieberman and Graham, they're basically going there to give their final goodbyes to McCain. And we see here that Megan, his daughter, is also returning to her father's side here. Recently, she retweeted that on Friday. So it seems to me that something is about to happen in McCain's life, that he may be about to start the third phase of his life, where he goes to spirit world and discovers stuff. Although I don't know. Some people say that if you don't learn, what's what in the physical world, then you're going to be pretty ignorant in the spirit world as well. I don't know. But anyway, he will at least find out that there is a life after death. That is for sure. That is for sure. Okay, so McCain, wish him all the best in his struggle, but he needs to maybe repent even in this last hours, last days of his life. Okay, and this also from Arizona, but a very different story. Waymo releases video from self-driving car just before crash. So I'll try to share this. Let me try to share this video with you. Unless the tech team can get it. This is a 5-second video here showing the crash. I'm going to try and share it. Share my screen. We're using Zoom today because I'm doing this from Dallas, Texas, and our tech team in Pennsylvania is sending it out over YouTube. A little bit complicated situation here. All right, so turn on this video. Let's try to give it a full screen. And this is what it looks like when a self-driving car crashes. Ooh. So which one was the self-driving car? Ooh. Okay. All right. Chandler, Arizona. Another self-driving vehicle has been involved in a crash. It's the second such wreck in less than 2 months. On Friday night, Waymo released a video of the moments before the crash. This time, it was a Waymo car. Waymo released a video Friday evening of the moments leading up to the crash. It shows a car veering out of its lane and coming directly toward the Waymo car. Oh, I see. So that was that car. So I guess the idea is that, hey, it wasn't our fault. It happened in Chandler at the Chandler Boulevard and Los Feliz Drive, which is east of McClintock Drive. The Waymo vehicle was not the violator vehicle and was in autonomous mode with an occupant behind the wheel at the time of the collision, according to Detective Seth Tyler of the Chandler Police Department. Video from the scene showed both vehicles on flatbed tow trucks. The Waymo vehicle was covered. According to police, the driver of a Honda heading east on Chandler Boulevard had to swerve to avoid hitting a car that was going north on Los Feliz Drive. The Honda veered into the westbound lanes of Chandler Boulevard and struck the Waymo vehicle, which was traveling at a slow speed and in autonomous mode. The person in the driver's seat of the Waymo vehicle suffered minor injuries. Police said the wreck is under investigation. Waymo released the following statement about the crash. The safety of self-driving vehicles was catapulted into the limelight in March when a self-driving Uber vehicle hit and killed a woman as she was crossing a street at night in Tempe, Arizona. Police released video of the moments leading up to the crash recorded by the SUV's cameras. Video from the interior camera shows the operator behind the wheel looking down as possibly at a mobile device in the moments leading up to the crash. In the very last frames of the released video, literally the last fraction of a second, it looks like Vasquez saw the pedestrian. That crash was the first fatality involving an autonomous vehicle. Uber immediately suspended testing of its self-driving cars. In late March, Governor Doug Ducey suspended Uber's ability to test and operate autonomous vehicles in Arizona's roadways. He specifically cited the fatal crash in explaining his decision. After reviewing video of the incident released from the Tempe Police Department recently, Ducey described the images he saw as disturbing and alarming, saying the video raises many questions about the ability of Uber to continue testing in Arizona. Ducey took the first ride in a driverless car in December 2016. It was a Waymo vehicle. Waymo started in 2009 as the Google self-driving project. It became an independent company in 2016. We've been working to make our roads safer, free up people's time, and improve mobility for everyone, according to Waymo's website. Waymo's self-driving car is still operating under Google. First hit the streets of Chandler in 2016. Yeah, this whole self-driving car thing, Warren Buffett predicted that this was going to destroy the insurance industry. I think it was a year ago or something like that. But it looks like that's not going to happen anytime soon. But Warren Buffett's thing was that this would basically eliminate traffic accidents. And so the insurance industry would no longer be able to sell car insurance. But, you know, I think he can rest easy for now. In fact, I don't think I've heard him say that recently. Maybe he's changed his mind. But self-driving cars are, maybe 100 years from now, you know, unless we have a reset, in other words, an apocalypse, but maybe 100 years from now, this will be the norm, as we see in some sci-fi movies. But it's a very dangerous thing because you're losing control, you're ceding control to someone else, because the people are ceding control to the people who write the program and to anyone who is able to hack into that program. People may call me old-fashioned, but I would be very uncomfortable to cede control like that to a robot. On the way down to Dallas this time, I used the cruise control several times, but you know, most of the time I felt I needed to be in control of the car, completely in control of the car, and I didn't even use the cruise control, because you don't know what's going to happen at any given split second, you know. And so my feeling is that the driver always needs to be in complete control of the car. So yeah, even cruise control, I was reluctant to use it. Let's see. Let's look at this article. The Trump administration to send 57,000 Hondurans in the United States back to Honduras, back home. You know, kind of ironic, isn't it? Because right now the caravan of migrants is at the border in San Ysidro, still trying to get in. I don't think they've all gotten in yet. And many of them are from Honduras. Others are from Guatemala and from El Salvador. And meanwhile, 57,000 are being sent home. The Trump administration said Friday that it is ending special immigration protection for about 57,000 Hondurans, adding them to the hundreds of thousands of immigrants from other countries battered by violence and natural disasters who are losing permission to be in the United States. Doesn't mean that they're going to go home immediately, because I don't think the government actually knows where these people are. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security's widely anticipated decision now not to renew temporary protected status for Hondurans means an estimated 428,000 people from several countries face rolling deadlines beginning late this year to leave or obtain legal residency in other ways. Hondurans will have until January 5, 2020. See, it's not going to happen immediately. Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen said, President Donald Trump, who wants to curtail legal immigration, has been cracking down broadly on illegal immigration, and his supporters note that the protections were never meant to be permanent. That's right. Well, let me see what's happening with the caravan. I don't see it, you know. I don't see it in the news portals this morning. Maybe it's sort of gone off the radar. Oh yeah, it says here, Reuters, last big group of caravan asylum seekers cross into U.S. All right, so they all made it across. Okay, they all made it across. I guess this was a Reuters story posted 14 hours ago. So let's look at what happened there. Okay. From Tijuana, Mexico, Reuters reporting 70 men, women, and children poured in through a U.S. port of entry early Friday to seek asylum, the largest single group yet accepted by U.S. officials from the caravan of Central American migrants that enraged President Donald Trump. Members of a caravan of migrants from Central America entered the United States on this photograph here. See, fleeing Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, the migrants were among the last who had planned to ask for asylum, bringing the total to 228 who have crossed the border since last weekend. So turned out not to be 1,500, just 228. Nearly 400 migrants who reached Tijuana last week faced wrenching dilemmas about whether to enter the United States and request asylum, beginning an indefinite and complex process that could end in deportation. Many decided to stay in Mexico for now. After a month-long, 2,000-mile journey, their arrival at the border was hotly anticipated. U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions beefed up legal resources on the border this week to handle people from the caravan. So they started out at the southern border of Mexico at 1,500. 400 actually, nearly 400, or in other words, less than 400, actually reached the border of the United States. And among those, 228 actually chose to enter the United States, at least for now. So I guess another 172 decided to stay in Mexico. Mexico is a great country. You know, you don't have to come to the United States. After Trump had urged that the caravan to be detained and repeated his call for stronger border security Monday morning, writing on Twitter, "Our southern border is under siege." So in the overall context of things, you know, even 1,500 would not have been a lot. Just that they come in as a group. But when you look at the hundreds of thousands of people who are coming over the border illegally on an annual basis, 1,500 is kind of a drop in the bucket. And even within that drop, most of them didn't even cross over. So it turned out to be a kind of a fizzle. The Trump administration said on Friday that it will end temporary protections on January 5, 2020 for up to 57,000 Honduran immigrants who arrived in the United States in the wake of Hurricane Mitch 2 decades ago. Temporary protection is different than the asylum status being claimed by the members of the caravan. Just after 9 a.m., the migrants lined up to enter the long passageway between the countries. In single file, they walked straight through, mothers carrying teddy bears in one hand and small children in the other. Among them was Irma Rivera, 31, with a son in her arms and a daughter prancing ahead. They had walked this route yesterday, leading to the U.S. gate with a large group of migrants only to be turned back. As they reached a bend in the walkway on Friday, the view opened onto American soil and a large U.S. flag. "Where's the wall? I want to climb Trump's wall," said the boy, 4 years old. His mother laughed, tears glistening. There was no wall in sight, only a chance to join a long-lost brother in Texas and begin a new life. Her husband, a farmer, was killed late last year in El Salvador by a gang of farmers he had denounced for robbing his land, she said. In Mexico, outside the port of entry, the remaining migrants were joined in a makeshift camp by other would-be asylum seekers who had come seeking information and donations. Meanwhile, the caravan's organizers scrambled to collect migrants' names to track their dispersal across the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement centers after they exit the port of entry's detention facility in the coming days. All right, so they all that wanted to make it across made it across, and now they begin the process. And the article talks about the woman with 2 children, and what the reporter fails to mention is that this mother is likely to be separated from her children during this process of seeking asylum. There's no mention of that in the Reuters article. Now, reporters go to stories like this and they become very subjective about the situation that's going on. And I think this reporter wanted to be sympathetic toward that mother and her 2 children. All right. All right, let's take a break now, and we'll come back with more news from a Tony perspective after this.
Firearms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Welcome back to the King's Report for May 5th, Saturday, 2018. Tim Miller sitting in for the second King of Changaluka, Hyung. Let's look now at the labor statistics, labor numbers that came out yesterday, showing that U.S. job growth is increased less than expected in April, and the unemployment rate dropped to a near 17.5-year low of 3.9% as some out-of-work Americans left the labor force. So the unemployment rate does not include people who have left the labor force. In other words, that they have stopped looking for jobs for various reasons. There are many reasons for that. The Labor Department's closely watched employment report on Friday also showed wages barely rose last month, which may ease concern that inflation pressures are rapidly building up, likely keeping the Federal Reserve on a gradual path of monetary policy tightening. again, this whole thing with the Federal Reserve trying to interfere in the markets when they shouldn't be doing that. Free markets can do this. Free markets are perfectly capable of bringing the best level of interest rates, but the Federal Reserve insists on trying to do better. Fed officials can rest easy that there is not any wage-based inflation on the horizon, said Chris Rupke, chief economist at MUFG in New York. There is no need to speed up the path of interest rates because inflation isn't heating up in a worrisome manner. Non-farm payrolls increased by 164,000 jobs last month, the Labor Department reported. Data for March was revised to show the economy adding 135,000 jobs instead of the previously reported 103,000. That was the fewest amount of jobs created in 6 months and followed an outsized gain of 324,000 in February. While cold weather in March and April probably held back job growth, hiring is moderating as the labor market hits full employment. Employers, especially in the construction and manufacturing sectors, are increasingly reporting difficulties finding qualified workers. That would seem to indicate an increase in wages then, that they would want to, if there's more competition over workers, qualified workers, they would want to increase the wages. But wages are not increasing. Not sure why that is the case. A drop of 0.2 of a percentage point of the unemployment rate from 4.1% in March pushed it to a level last seen in December 2000, and within striking distance of the Fed's forecast of 3.8% by the end of this year. It was the first time in 6 months that the jobless rate dropped. But 236,000 people left the labor force in April, adding to the 150,000 who quit in March. The labor force participation rate, or the proportion of working-age Americans who have a job or are looking for one, fell to 62.8% last month from 62.9% in March. It was the second straight monthly drop in the participation rate. Economists polled by Reuters had forecast payrolls rising by 192,000 jobs in April, and the unemployment rate falling to 4.0%. Average hourly earnings rose 0.1% last month after a 0.2% gain in March. That left the annual increase in average hourly earnings at 2.6%. The dollar shrugged off the employment data. You're talking about the foreign exchange markets now, rising to its highest level this year against a basket of currencies. Stocks on Wall Street rallied, with all three indexes closing more than 1% higher. The U.S. Treasury yields were little changed after dropping to multi-week lows. Sluggish wage growth and slowdown in hiring threatened to undercut the Trump administration's argument that its $1.5 trillion income tax cut package, which came into effect in January and is highlighted by a sharp drop in the corporate income tax rate, would boost wages and hiring. Companies like Apple have used their tax windfall for share buybacks and dividends. Well, still, you're putting money out there. I mean, Apple is buying back its shares. That means someone's getting that money, and also dividends. Someone's getting that money, so then it's going to be spent. That spending then will eventually create jobs, I think. President Donald Trump cheered the drop in the unemployment rate on Friday. I thought the jobs report was very good. The biggest thing to me was cracking 4, Trump told reporters. That hasn't been done in a long time. We're at full employment. We're doing great. Democrats, however, reiterated their criticism of the tax cuts, saying that $390 billion in share buybacks had been announced since the passage of the tax bill. And President Trump promised American families that they would see a $4,000 annual raise after the tax plan. So far, average weekly wages have increased $11.69, Democratic Senator Martin Heinrich said. Listen, Heinrich, the raise has to do with how much less you're paying in taxes, all right? And a lot of it is related to that. And the average weekly wages have increased to $11.69. So comparing apples to oranges, and I think he's doing it purposely so as to confuse the voters. But average hourly earnings could be understating wage inflation. The employment cost index, widely viewed by policymakers and economists as one of the better measures of labor market slack show wages rising at their fastest pace in 11 years during the first quarter. See that, Mr. Senator Heinrich? Inflation is flirting with the Fed's 2% target. The Fed's preferred inflation measure, the personal consumption expenditure price index, including food and energy, was up 1.9% year over year in March after a 1.6% rise in February. The U.S. Central Bank on Wednesday left interest rates unchanged and said it expected annual inflation to run close to its symmetric 2% target over the medium term. Economists interpreted symmetric to mean policymakers would not be too worried about inflation overshooting the target. Two Fed officials who are currently voting members of the central bank's rate-setting committee showed little concern on Friday about price pressures heating up and said they were keeping an open mind on the total number of rate increases needed this year. Well, okay, the article goes on, but you get the idea. The idea that these people who think themselves to be very smart can outsmart the market is very dangerous, and it really doesn't work. Look how many managed funds, all right, beat the S&P 500 index. Not many. Even though those managed funds are managed by people who consider themselves to be very smart and are able to convince their bosses that they're very smart and able to convince their investors that they're very smart. Still, most of the time, those managed funds do not beat the S&P 500, which is more of a kind of a free market index. Here in the Washington Examiner, we see that Black and Hispanic unemployment rates hit record lows in April. Let's see what the rates are. I'm not going to go through the stuff that we already know about. The unemployment rate for Black workers dropped to 6.6%, beating the previous record low of 6.8% set in December. The jobless rate for Hispanics fell to 4.8%, tying the record reached last year and in 2006. Meanwhile, the unemployment for white Americans stood at 3.6%. There's a heck of a lot of good news in this report. Kevin Hassett, chairman of the White House Council of Economic Advisors, said on the numbers on Fox Business, President Trump has trumpeted the historically low unemployment rates for minorities seen in recent months, while the situation for those groups has continued to improve on his watch, though unemployment rates for Black Americans and others have been falling for over half a decade. All right, so they've been falling, but Trump keeps them falling, and that's the point, isn't it? But guess who the Democrats want to credit? Valerie Jarrett says we should give Obama credit for today's jobs report. Today, of course, meaning yesterday. The breaking news that we just had moments ago, where the job numbers, the lowest in anybody's memory, 3.9% unemployment rate. It's been 15 months of Donald Trump's presidency. Do you give him credit for that? Jared, look, I think we have to look at it over a longer horizon than that. If you think about what the economy was like when President Obama took office, we were losing 750,000 jobs a month. Under his watch, the unemployment rate dropped in half. And it's encouraging to see that we're continuing to make progress. We want to see wages go up. And I think that's an important focus. And I was glad to see you talk about that too. So for the workers out there who are back to work today, I think it's very encouraging. Of course, Michelle Obama, yesterday we saw how she declared herself the forever First Lady. And I guess former President Obama would like to declare himself the forever president, but of course that would be a little bit too strong. And so he's holding back for now. But wow, he must really, envy Xi Jinping, who has basically, eliminated, he has eliminated term limits for president and vice president, and so he is now the forever president of China. And Valerie Jarrett, I guess, still considers Obama to be the president and the forever president of the United States of America. Okay, let's look at the Rasmussen poll here. I'm going to share my screen on this because I want to show particular graphs. Rasmussen poll has a daily poll of support for the president. Let's see here. Okay. Let me increase it 150% so that people can see it. Or maybe even further up. Yeah, that'll be good. Probably. All right. The Rasmussen Report's daily presidential tracking poll for Friday shows that 51% of likely U.S. voters approve of President Trump's job performance, 49% disapprove. So there's not much undecided, is there? As a matter of fact, the undecided is 0. 81% of Republicans like the job the president is doing. 75% of the Democrats don't. Well, look at that. 25% of Democrats do, I guess. That's pretty good. Among voters not affiliated with either party, 47% approve and 51% disapprove. That's not so good because you always need that independent vote in order to create a Republican majority. The latest figures include 33% of all likely voters who strongly approve of the way the president is performing and 40% who strongly disapprove. This gives him a presidential approval index rating of -7. Okay, let's go down to the this graph here, and I've introduced this before, so maybe you're already familiar with it. Wait a second, are people seeing my? Okay, the blue here is Obama, all right, and this tracks Obama's approval day by day, beginning at 23rd of January of 2009, and then President Trump beginning the 23rd of January in 2017. So at the first day of the inauguration for both presidents, the 20th, I'm sorry, begins on the 20th of each person, of each president. All right. So when it started out, Obama was way ahead of Trump, 67 to 56. But then here, we had something happen here, and then now Trump is ahead of Obama, right? Because at this point in Obama's presidency, this is May 18 and May 10. I'm not sure why that discrepancy of 8 days occurs, but basically at this point in the presidency, Obama was down below 50%, and Trump is now above 50%. He was at 51% here, April 16th, and here, April 4th. Okay, and so Trump has been on an upswing. Of course, he's not doing as well as he did when he was first inaugurated, and I think that has to do with disappointment over over the wall thing, and not building the wall. I think that's the major thing. He's been doing pretty well in most other areas, but the wall is the big hole in his presidency so far. All right, let's go back to the articles here, and we've gone through a lot today, and we're coming to the end of our session. Let's just check to see if there's any updates on the stories that we've already covered. I don't see anything here. Okay. Especially worried about the situation in Hawaii, where the volcano continues to erupt, although the fissures, I guess, are dormant for now, and but people are being encouraged to evacuate, and hope that we can continue to see a situation where no one is hurt in that eruption there. Fox News this morning now is reporting the Hawaii volcano as its top news story. And I know that many people are praying for that. And also we have here a situation where the Obama aide linked to the Trump dossier has left the FBI. She's one of the people that was tweeting, or I'm sorry, sending texts to her lover that showed that the two were very much involved in trying to get rid of Trump and trying to prevent his election to the presidency. And now she has left the agency, and Fox News has confirmed that. And what else do we see here? Mission to Mars spacecraft heads to Red Planet on first interplanetary mission from the West Coast. And Trump image in schools mural infuriates the community. Yes, there's a school here that it's a school and it's a mural on the wall in the school, all right? And you have a warrior with a spear, and he has speared Trump's head. And this is on the wall of a school. He has pierced the head of President Trump. This is in the United States. Hello, Secret Service, what are you guys doing? Check this out. You know, this kind of advocacy of violence is really getting out of hand on the left. It's not the conservatives that are advocating violence, it's the left. And it's getting worse. We hope that everyone can stay safe despite that leftist violence. It's leftist fascists, left-wing fascists that are fomenting this violence. All right, please stay safe this weekend, and let's all survive to build the Chunuguk of God's dreams. God bless, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come. Thank you for tuning in.